Today, we are diving into a building that was so out there, so bizarre, that people first called it a monstrosity. And now, well, now it's hailed as an absolute masterpiece. So, when Casa Milà was finished back in 1912, the locals in Barcelona gave it this nickname, La Pedrera. And just so we're clear, that was not a compliment. To them, this rough, wavy building didn't look like a building at all. It looked like a giant stone quarry just got plopped down in the middle of their beautiful city. And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How does a building that was literally a punchline, a target for public ridicule, end up becoming a treasured UNESCO World Heritage Site? Well, that's the story we're gonna unpack. So let's set the scene. We're on Passeig de Gràcia, which was and still is the most glamorous, high-fashion street in Barcelona. It's 1906, and this wealthy, pretty flamboyant couple decides they want a new home that's gonna blow everything else out of the water. So they hire a true visionary to build it. Now, the architect was the one and only Antoni Gaudí, a deeply religious man who was at the absolute top of his game. And his clients, Milla and Roser Sigmund, were a high society power couple who wanted to make a huge statement. So you have all the ingredients for a masterpiece, right? Well, yeah, and also for a massive clash of personalities. Because Gaudí's vision, it was unlike anything anyone in Barcelona or frankly the world had ever seen. And this vision was going to spark some serious conflict, not just with the city, but with the very people who were paying the bills. You see, this quote right here was Gaudí's whole philosophy. He lived by it, and he designed a building with basically no straight lines. Zero. Everything was inspired by the flowing organic shapes you see in nature. You know, the waves of the ocean, the curves of a mountain. And the public? They were just completely baffled. I mean, satirical magazines were making fun of it, neighbors were worried it was going to tank their property values, and the city actually fined Gaudí because the building was too tall. The whole thing really came to a head when the Millas got nervous and rejected Gaudí's plan for this giant statue of the Virgin Mary on the roof. And Gaudí, he just quit right there on the spot. And believe me, the drama was just as intense inside the house. The story goes that Roser Sigmund was furious about all the curved walls, complaining that she had nowhere to put her prized Steinway piano. And Gaudí's legendary response was basically, well, then you should play the violin. So you have to ask, was Gaudí just some stubborn artist totally obsessed with curves? Or was there something else going on? Well, it turns out that behind every single one of those controversial design choices was a stroke of pure engineering genius. Okay, let's start with that crazy exterior, that wave of stone. It's actually a self-supporting curtain wall, which was a totally revolutionary idea. See, the facade isn't holding the building up. It's more like a skin attached to the internal frame. And that single innovation changes everything on the inside. Because the exterior walls aren't load-bearing, the interior walls don't have to be either. They could be moved or even taken out completely. This meant that residents could totally customize their apartments. Think about that, an open-plan, customizable living space. That concept was light years ahead of its time. And instead of those dark, dreary service shafts you usually see in buildings from this era, Gaudí designed two huge interior courtyards, and these weren't just an afterthought. He thought of them as the building's lungs, pulling in fresh air and flooding all 20 apartments with natural light. He even had the walls painted with beautiful floral murals. Then you get to the attic, and wow, it's just breathtaking. The whole space is held up by 270 of these lightweight brick arches. They're called catenary arches, and they're so strong they don't need any other support. It feels like you're standing inside the skeleton of a giant whale. Oh, and it also happens to work as a massive insulator for the whole building. And finally, we have to talk about that famous rooftop. A poet once called it the Garden of Warriors, and you can totally see why. But here's the thing. These incredible figures aren't just sculptures. Those chimneys are shaped to perfectly guide the flow of smoke. And the towers are actually brilliantly disguised ventilation shafts, form and function perfectly merged. So this is where it all clicks into place. That wild stone wave facade, that's what makes the customizable interior possible. Those warrior chimneys on the roof, they're making the building breathe better. You see it again and again. For Gaudí, the incredible, surreal beauty was always a consequence of a brilliant, practical function. Now, you'd think, after all that genius, the building would be an instant hit. But nope. After Gaudí died, the building was neglected for decades. It was even, and I'm not kidding, painted a dreary brown at one point. But slowly but surely, the world started to catch up. Over the course of the 20th century, the building's reputation did a complete 180. That old nickname, La Pedrera, it lost all of its sting. People started saying it with affection. The local laughingstock was finally on its way to becoming a global treasure. And today, it is not some dusty old museum. It is a living, breathing part of Barcelona. It hosts art exhibits, rooftop jazz concerts, and get this, a handful of very lucky long-term tenants still call this architectural icon their home. Can you even imagine? Its influence has even spread to a galaxy far, far away. Seriously. The story goes that George Lucas was so captivated by those rooftop warriors that he modeled the iconic helmets of his Imperial stormtroopers directly after them. So that brings us all the way back to our big question. What Casa Milà really shows us is that the designs that truly last, the ones that have real impact, are the ones that manage to blend a crazy artistic vision with the simple elegance of nature. It challenges us all to think a little differently about the places we build, and it proves that sometimes the most radical ideas are the ones that end up standing the test of time.